In this episode of 5 Minutes of Cloud, we're going to look at the compute aspect of cloud environments. What makes up compute? How can we look at it? What kinds of services can it actually offer us? So a common question when somebody asks about cloud services and cloud systems is what kind of capabilities the compute aspect, the actual service that most of us are actually looking for from cloud can actually deliver. It is considered one of the infrastructure as a service scale core services. Enabling compute, network, and storage are the three data center services that people usually look at. When we're talking about compute, we're talking about compute relative to the concept of cloud. We're looking at something that is elastic, on-demand, self-service, deliverable as a capability. And we're looking at a number of different technologies that can actually implement that compute class function. So we're looking at things like bare metal service, virtualized services, and now even container-based services, which is basically a subset of the virtual system space. When we talk about bare metal as a capability in the cloud service environment, we're really talking about the classic computer, the CPU complex, the memory that goes along with it, and often local storage of some nature, local being relative depending on the actual type of compute that we're looking at. On top of that bare metal, in order for the compute service to be meaningful, often we're also looking at how an operating system interacts with that capability. So we're looking at an operating system on top of that compute complex. We may be looking at a number of different technologies. There's nothing that says that it has to be Intel-based, although that is the most common model for compute service in the cloud environment. But we're really looking at usually Intel, although there are some services that provide ARM-based services, infrastructure services as well. And then there's some esoteric models as well for certain environments. That's in the bare metal space. We still need to get an operating system on there. There's more work that has to be done. Then there's the concept of compute in the virtual space. So taking that physical box, that big chunk of metal that we have wrapped around compute, and virtualizing it. So making it look to an operating system as if we have multiple versions of the same thing, but all built in one box. And given that modern physical hardware, the bare metal hardware, often has multiple compute complex cores. Basically, the actual CPUs have multiple components that can act like individual servers themselves. Virtualizing this system is actually very powerful. It's a very functional system. And there are lots of technologies that enable that virtualization, things like the VMware ESX hypervisor, which is a micro operating system effectively that provides that virtualization management layer, or the Linux-based KVM, kernel virtual machine interface models. Lots of different technologies can support that virtual service capability. We can also extend beyond that and realize that virtualization is really powerful because it allows us to have a whole operating system, effectively a security boundary, and yet something that looks very similar to what most systems administrators or systems operators are very used to using, which is a full-on computer. Then we get into the latest technology that's really taken the cloud system space by storm. It's not new technology by any means, but it's something that is being used more and more in the platform space and is mapping back into the infrastructure space, so tying into the compute providing provisions for infrastructure as a service by providing a container. Now, the concept behind a container is really effectively a security boundary around a process. So your application running, or the Apache web server that's actually providing your application running as a way of sort of segregating that resource and service construct. The container environment has a number of technologies also, much like the bare metal service or the virtual service. And then in the container environment, we see things like Docker and LXC, LXD kind of systems environments that are providing that abstraction management component. And then on top of that, we're seeing additional services like the Kubernetes and Mesos type systems and management environments. Docker Swarm also sort of fit into that same sort of system space. So we've talked about bare metal, virtual, and container-based services that makes up our core compute environment. And then we can layer on all kinds of additional capabilities and services. For example, just managing operating systems, managing whether they be on bare metal or virtual machines, managing the container bundle components, the libraries and container components, dealing with monitoring and service management, log capture, etc. All of this out of the compute system. It comes from the processes that are running within the compute environment, the base operating systems that are running in the compute environment. So this makes up the compute system space. Again, we're looking at potentially bare metal, virtual, or container-based services. We're looking at within those, the operating systems that get layered on top of them, or the service constructs that get layered on top of them, a set of different management components and environments. In the virtual space, we have the hypervisor services that provide the virtualization management layer, or in the container space, we have container tools like Docker or LXC and some of the management services around them. That makes up the compute solution within the cloud system space. Thanks for watching. This was Robert Starmer bringing you 5 Minutes of Cloud. 5 Minutes of Cloud is brought to you by Kumulus Technologies, the company I actually work for, and we really appreciate the fact that you actually attended and watched this little segment. We obviously have a YouTube channel here, so please subscribe to that. We have Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. Yeah, I do actually find some interesting things to say on Twitter once in a while. And on top of that, we have a mailing list. If you subscribe to the mailing list, we have a free report, basically 5 pitfalls of cloud that you can avoid if you get my report. So why don't you hop on over to our website, sign up for the mailing list. You'll get that report delivered to your inbox shortly after signing up. And I think that's also another very interesting and important read. Thanks so much again for watching.